In this video, I'm going to show you a very exciting game with very unusual things happening already at the start of the game, but also at the very end. Brilliant things are going to be seen, so you will definitely enjoy it. I have to admit that I didn't know this game myself. The game was played back in 1984 between the players Diemer and Heiling in Nuremberg. And well, it's an exciting game, but I didn't know about it, and only thanks to the support of you guys, somebody in the comments referred to that game, and that's how I got to know it, and I started to analyze, and I thought this is a game I want to share with you. Just to make sure, if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do so, because I want to grow the channel. Thanks for all the overwhelming comments on the Hans Niemann versus Vladimir Kramnik game. It was overwhelming. Great feedback. I really appreciate it. So help the channel grow, and then you can see more exciting videos, including this one. Because in the game, as I said, Diemer against Heiling, played in 1984 Nuremberg. Strange things are happening. d4, knight f6, and already at move 2, we see that white is playing a strange move as he goes for the move f3. And f3 itself, it's a kind of typical move as white is preparing to go for the move e4 very soon. But if black would play here the move d5, it will not be that simple, because pawn and knight are covering both this e4 square. And with a pawn on f3, it means that a knight from g1 cannot easily be developed. However, d5 was not played, d6 on the board, and now we are getting some sort of transposition to the Pirch opening, e4, g6. Especially if white would continue here with the move knight c3, just continue with normal development. That's what you're supposed to do in the opening. Place a pawn in the center, develop your minor pieces, and then bring your king into safety. Well, this game is totally different, and white has different plans. Starting here with another pawn move. Pawn goes to g4. Very interesting, ambitious move. And well, we see that the pawn is ready to come up to g5 to kick the knight away. Very exciting idea, but of course it also involves some risk as white neglects its own development. Bishop g7, and look, pawn goes to g5 already now. Maybe this is a bit premature. The knight can even come to h5 to block the advance of the h-pawn, but at the same time the knight is stranded. So it's difficult to say whether this is a good move or not. I think knight is doing pretty well on h5, as it will not be simple for white to make further progress. However, knight fd7 was played, and here you would really expect white to follow up here with the pawn storm with the move h4, h5. However, in the game there followed the move f4. Black, typically trying to challenge that overwhelming pawn center of white, wanted to counter it with the move c5, putting pressure against that pawn on d4. White plays here the move d5, and grabbing more space, the pawn covers the c6 square, so the knight on b8 is in trouble. Black played here the move b5. That's sacrificing a pawn, or well, not really, because after bishop takes b5, it's queen a5, with a double attack. If you block it with a knight, you eliminate the defender with bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and now the bishop on b5 is hanging, can just be taken. So the pawn on b5 is poisoned. You're not advised to take it. White played the move c3, another pawn move. Now bishop takes b5 is a serious threat, so black protects the pawn with the move a6, and white plays here the move h4. Black played knight b6, so that both the other knight and the bishop from c8 can be developed very soon, and white goes for h5. Look at this, these pawns are really far advanced, and all these pieces there are still on their initial squares, but at the same time, is black really able to take advantage of that? That's the big question. Black played e6, challenging the pawn on d5. White goes h6, also a very interesting attacking concept. Rather than opening up the h-file, white advances the pawn to h6 to attack the bishop on g7. Bishop has to go back to f8, and that really disturbs black's development. That's not the kind of move you want to play, although at the same time the files on the king side, they remain closed, so there's not an immediate attack visible against the black king. White had now a different plan. Now the king side is locked. shifts the attention to the other side of the board. Really remarkable idea with the move a4. And the idea is that if you do take with a knight, white wants to follow up with the move c4 to undermine that pawn on b5, which is a very important support for that knight on a4. That's a very interesting idea. Likely you're going to win back some material, or even you can play maybe b3 followed by bishop b2, get a bishop on this diagonal, and well, in case of b takes a4 instead, also a move like c4 followed by knight c3 gives white a better grip on the center with a pawn on c4 and the knight coming to c3. White's prospects are great. So instead, after a4, e takes d5 was played, and look now, white continued with the move a5, attacking the knight on b6. The knight went back to d7, but obviously that's not what black really want to do, because it blocks the path of the minor pieces. Now e takes d5, white recaptures with a pawn, and after bishop e7, white played the move c4. So pawn is supporting the pawn on d5, but most importantly, at some point the knight from b1 can be developed to c3, which is obviously the most active square. One other idea of the move c4, of course, is to take the pawn on b5, whereas in case black would consider taking himself, well, there could follow knight d2 with a plan of taking with the knight on c4. The knight is excellently placed on that square, as it cannot be kicked out by any of black's pieces or pawns. So that's an interesting move. Black had different ideas. I should point out that even b4, preventing the knight from coming to c3, is an interesting move, but black instead played here the move f6, challenging that pawn on g5. And now I would say that a move like knight f3 to get a knight into play, just be able to meet f takes g5 with f takes g5, I think that's a very sensible continuation, as now both the bishop and knight are supporting that pawn on g5, which means that the bishop and queen, they are not able to take on g5. So that's a very nice and logical move, but instead c takes b5 was played. So now white really wants to win that pawn on b5. Black played here the move f takes g5, opening up the king side. So it's a very unusual position. We are now at move 17, and white may have considered here even advancing the pawn to b6. I think that's a very good move, getting a protected passed pawn, but instead there followed another pawn move, very unexpected. The move f4, f5 was played. White is sacrificing a pawn, and well, you should understand that the position gets more and more open. This is very risky for both sides. One mistake can be absolutely crucial. What should black do? I think black is really recommended now to bring the king into safety. You can castle kingside, and if you would take the pawn on g6, maybe just knight e5. Get the pieces into the game. The knight is fantastically placed on e5. The bishop can get out. And even if you, let's say, take on h7, you can take the pawn, but you can hide in the corner. I think the black king is absolutely safe, and black's pieces, they are quite dominant. I think this would be a very good strategy. But instead, black played here the move g takes f5. Very risky move, just taking the pawn. But look, there's queen h5 check. King has to go to f8, and now the knight comes in to f3. Very serious stuff now, because the pawn on g5 is attacked 3 times and only twice defended. Black has ideas even of getting the knight over to f6. If you take the pawn on g5, maybe rook g8 is okay, because you attack the queen, you're preventing the white queen from coming to g7. But instead, there followed rook g8 right away. But now white changes its mind, plays the move b6, and now the board is wide open on both sides, even in the center, on the king side and on the queen side. Look at this pawn on b6. This is a serious problem for black in the long run. This pawn cannot easily be eliminated. Black played here the move bishop to b7, attacking the pawn on d5, and now there is the move knight to c3, protecting the pawn. Black goes for the move knight f6, attacking the queen. And now, guys, wait a second. This is something you have to think about yourself as well. So pause the video if you want. And can you see a very nice continuation here for white? The queen is under threat. But you know, in the battle for the initiative, you normally don't want to make a concession. You would like to continue with your own ideas, and that is what white is supposed to do now as well. Rather than moving the queen away, there is knight takes g5 with a mating threat on f7 with the queen, or even knight e6 is checkmate. Black can of course take the queen on h5, but there is knight e6. It's a knight fork, and white is gonna regain the queen. As simple as that. King gotta go away, and then we take on d8. Excellent idea. So now everything is hanging. If you take that knight either with the bishop or with the king, then white is able to take on h5. The smoke has cleared. Materials even, but once again, I think that pawn on b6 is really problematic. It's a protected passed pawn that becomes a serious weapon in positions where pieces are getting exchanged soon. So instead, after knight takes d8, there follow the move knight to g3, trying to preserve the knight. The rook cannot take it, while at the same time the knight on g3 is even attacking the rook on h1. So that looks excellent. But what are we going to do? Are we moving the rook away? No way, because the knight is protected and black is threatening to take the knight on d8. So there follows knight takes b7, knight takes h1. It's an exchange sacrifice. But look now, the bishop comes into play with the bishop on f4. We are attacking the pawn on d6. Pawn was protected with rook g6, and now castling queenside. Finally, white is completing its own development. So, well, there are ideas to get a bishop into play, either to, let's say, d3 or h3, attacking the knight on h1. So knight comes back to f2, and here there is this move rook to e1, pinning the bishop on e7. So the bishop is not a good defender of the pawn on d6. White is really threatening to take it. Black played here the move king d7, getting out of the pin, keeping everything protected. Pawn on d6, also the knight on b7 is sort of trapped. But now, another brilliant move by white. Pause the video one more time, subscribe to the channel, like this video, do anything within your capacity to support this channel. And in the meantime, you gotta find the brilliant move. Knight b5, guys. This is just incredible. Incredible shot with the point that the knight is about to penetrate into black's position with ideas either of taking the pawn on d6 or come into c7, trapping the rook in the corner. Look at that piece. It cannot go anywhere. The knight on b8 is not able to move. And of course, the main point is that after a takes b5, you do take back with the bishop. It's a check. The king has to go into the corner. And now after rook takes e7, white has a crushing attack without queens, because rook c7 is their mating threat. Probably there are much other threats as well. But that's the main idea behind that move, knight to b5. Instead, there followed knight e4. Black is blocking off the e file. So the rook seems to be out of play. But can you see the next move? Knight is taken with the move rook takes e4. Fantastic shot. And if you would take back with the f pawn, there would follow bishop h3, check, king e8, and then it's knight c7 check, for instance. King gotta go away, and then after knight takes a8, the position is absolutely hopeless. You have two minor pieces for a rook, but most importantly, this b pawn is really powerful, and knight on b8 is very badly placed. That should be a technical win. So after rook takes e4, black instead didn't capture the rook on e4. Play the move rook to g1, pinning the bishop on f1. Of course, also the rook on e4 is hanging, but rook can simply come back to e1. And well, one of the ideas is that after a takes b5, there is bishop takes b5 check, and the rook on g1 is hanging. So that is also not possible. Therefore, rook takes f1 was played first, eliminating that bishop. Now after rook takes, a takes b5, we can see that material is more or less even again, but this pawn is really strong. And now the rook comes into the game, will enter on g7 on the next move. Rook g1 is an excellent move by white. The king went to c8, but now it's knight takes d6. Bishop takes, and pawn is really strong. Also, just rook g8 is there with ideas of even trading off, simplifying into a king and pawn endgame. It's one of the ideas. After knight d7, rook g8 check, king b7, rook g7, pinning the knight on d7. That's absolutely crushing. No time to go here for a move like rook d8. It will be met by bishop c7, and now both the rook and knight are hanging. If the rook goes away, the knight will be taken. Instead, king c8 was played. Of course, black wouldn't mind repeating the moves here, but white has different ideas. Play the move rook takes h7. Excellent idea, creating a new passed pawn. Rook takes a5. One of these pawns needs to be eliminated, but now it's b7 check. The king got to take the pawn, but now the knight is no longer defended, and white is a piece up. After king c8, it's h7, rook a1, king c2. Of course, there's nothing you can do against the promotion of the h-pawn. Rook was taken, and after h8 queen, king takes d6. Well, just two more moves were played here, but after king e5, d6, white is probably getting another queen very soon. So that is game over. So thanks for the mention in the comments. If you have very interesting ideas, always let me know. If there's a specific game you would like to see, I will try to bring it to the channel. I thought this game was very instructive because, well, the first 17 moves, only pawn moves by white. That's something very unusual and something you should normally not do yourself. But if you can really mobilize your pawns, you take away a lot of squares from the enemy's pieces, and then thanks to the space advantage later on, you have possibilities of building up a devastating initiative. So that's why I wanted to show you that such a strategy can pay off in certain cases, but also make sure that your pieces will join play very soon, because with only pawn moves, you're not able to win a game, but in combination with grabbing space and very active piece play, you can get really far. Make sure to give it a like one more time, subscribe to the channel, and very soon more educational videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.